And welcome. This is Peter Winnick. I'm the founder and CEO of Thought Leadership Leverage, and you're joining us on the podcast today, which is Leveraging Thought Leadership. Today, my guest is Joe Sanok. He is the author of a new book called Thursday is the New Friday, which is like, I guess, 60 is the new 50 or 50 is the new 40. We're always trying to get ahead of ourselves there. Quick background on Joe. In 2012, he launched the Practice of the Practice, to blog about what he was learning about business, marketing, and private practice. He posts his income every month on his blog, which I think is pretty cool. He's been a keynoter and a 10X speaker and a podcaster. And instead of talking about him, let's talk with him. So, hey, Joe, how are you?
I'm great, Peter. How are you?
Good. So how did this happen? How did you grow up to be this?
I was raised by a psychologist and a nurse practitioner and took a very traditional route where got double master's degrees and kind of worked at community mental health as a psychologist. And, I thought if I can just work at a community college someday, that'll be easy peasy for the rest of my life. And I achieved that and realized, I want to do a little bit more. And I had this side gig private practice and started a podcast just talking about what I was doing. And I remember the day I had run over to this private practice to do a lunch session and came back from my corner office view of the water private practice. That was my side gig, 5-10 hours a week, back to my basement office at the college with no windows. And I started doing the math and I'm like, I am making more in the side gig than I am in the full-time job. So I started to move away from that. And when my second child was born, I took the full Family Medical Leave Act to just test it out. Worked 20 hours a week still at the college to pay for health insurance. And then each month was better than the month before, and eventually left that full-time job for full-time private practice. And then in 2012 sold that practice. And 2019 sold that practice. And since then I've been doing the whole podcasting, writing, consulting thing as my main gig.
So is the practice a consulting practice? Was that the business?
Yeah. So the practice that I sold in 2019 was primarily a mental health practice. So kind of very traditional anxiety, depression, couples work. We had 12 clinicians that worked there.
Therapy practice.
So it's total therapy practice. Sold the therapy arm of it. And now I just do consulting primarily with individuals that are starting, growing, and scaling a private practice. We have a membership community and small groups, mastermind, a bunch of consultants. And then my work has really shifted to thought leaders. So people starting podcasts that are leveling up, been consulting with places like Nissan and larger companies that want to kind of think about mental health and their work schedules a little bit differently.
Got it. So here's what I find. I'd love to see if you find similar things, is people that are drawn to whatever the work they're drawn to from a thought leadership perspective, right? It could be teams, it could be leadership, it could be a jail, whatever it is. They're incredibly passionate about what they do. They're really, really smart. They've researched it. They're best in class. And then they want to dive in on the business side of it. And sometimes what they underestimate or don't realize is it's not like a job where you come in at 9:00 on a Monday and somebody says, hey, Joe, here's your desk. And 9:30 is your first client and 10:30 is the second one. It's like, now you got to do this sales, marketing, biz dev, build a brand, all that stuff. That's where I find the struggle. So is that similar to your experience working with folks?
Yeah, I think no matter what field you're in, I think the section that you're really good at, and then the rest of it, oftentimes people are surprised by, whether that's the amount of online marketing you have to do or just how much time, oftentimes it takes. And so for me, kind of with Practice of the Practice and Thursday is the New Friday, figuring out what really is my sweet spot of what I want to do. And then figuring out what is it that I want to outsource? Where do I need to bring in assistants? Where do I need to bring in professionals? Or where do I need to cut things out? Because I really want to be focusing almost all of my time on the things that align best with my skill set. So I can't have my assistant come hang out with you on this podcast, but I can have her checking my email right now and texting me if there's a really important email. And so that's where I think a lot of thought leaders get stuck, is they feel like they have to do it all. And then they find themselves burned out and stressed out, and they're not doing their best work anymore.
Or they feel like they have to do it all, and there's 5 things on the list that they hate doing, they're awful at doing, nobody but themselves would hire them to do, or they procrastinate doing it because all this, like, they have no interest in figuring out the latest way to hack the algorithm on LinkedIn or something silly like that. And then they struggle, and they're really good at the craft, but not, I think to operate as a business, you have to identify all the functions that need to be done and get them done, which is different than you doing that, right? So if you're not, if finance is not your game, you don't get to run a business and say, oh, we just won't invoice our clients. They'll just they'll pay us. I'm sure they'll pay us. They like us, right? Like that's not going to work, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, even when I look at my individual team, kind of the industrialist model is you hire somebody for a particular role, and then the only way for them to make more money is to become a supervisor. And I think we've outgrown that model. I always ask my team members, several times a year, what are the things you're doing that you still absolutely love? What are the things you're doing that you
Sure.
absolutely hate? And then where are you headed? What do you want to get trained in or do that maybe isn't even on your schedule right now? And so it's been amazing to see how when I ask those questions, the things that I want to take off my plate, oftentimes someone else on the team says, I really want to learn to do that. And
Right.
so
So
I
that's a
had one of my
win-win. Right.
Right.
Total win-win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I had one lady who she started as just doing a little bit of design. Then she did more
Hmm.
design. Then she came on full time. Then she went through a whole video marketing course, video editing
Sure.
course. She now oversees a whole media team for me because she said, I want to do these things instead of, I want to make more money. So I guess I got to become a supervisor. It's like, well, are you a good supervisor? No. Well, why would we put you in a supervisor role then? And so, really, it's been a great way to kind of organically or evolutionarily grow a team instead of just saying, here's the role you were hired for. You have to keep doing that.
Got it. Another thought I'd love your input on is, let's say they get through that, right? Right. So they've got some of the marketing, et cetera. I think one of the most important questions that folks have to answer early as a thought leader, as a coach, as a consultant, as an advisor is, who's my client, right? And when the answer to that is, oh, there's so many, either everyone or leaders or something like ridiculously vague and broad, that actually frightens me for them. And I think it is a bit counterintuitive to get really, it's not just the demographics are easy, married women over 25, you can buy a list for that. But I think where we're moving today is a world that is more psychographically driven, right? So talk to me about that. Like, because I'll talk to my clients and say, okay, tell me about your best client experiences and your worst. What's the common denominator here other than you? Like, oh, maybe you don't like working with technical people. Tell me about your experience there.
Yeah. I mean, I think about for a long time, I thought I needed to move out of my niche of helping counselors in private practice to grow their businesses. But you look at the average therapist, they're making between $100 and $200 per client session. So if I can teach them to have 5 more clients a week, that's clearly $1,000 ROI. And so are they
Sure.
going to pay me 2 to 3 times their hourly? A smart one will pay that all day long because if they're paying $600 an hour for someone that can clearly help them grow, that helps them, that helps me. So to be able to do that sort of work, when you've niched in that
Mm-hmm.
much, I can outpace any other business consultant because I am focusing so much on helping people start, grow, and scale a private practice. And then I'm listening to that audience to say, well, what do they need? So for example, someone's starting a private practice, they don't have a lot of money, they have a lot of hustle. So that's where we have a membership community where, it's
Mm-hmm.
$100 a month and we have 300 people in this thing. We can then teach these same things over and over and help them on a group scale where they're just paying the cost of less than 1 session a month. And so when you niche in and figure out what are the problems that your individual client is dealing with, you can outpace the competition in a much different way because it's not an information issue. Most people, would agree that we are out of the information age. We have plenty of
We're
information out
drowning in
there.
information. We're
Yeah,
drowning in it. Yeah.
we are in the implementation age. So if you can save someone 100 hours on YouTube or 10 hours on YouTube or whatever, if that therapist is charging $200 an hour and I save them 5 hours, I just saved them $1,000. And so if I can be their implementation person by niching in so
Yep.
specifically, I can charge more and I can also have a lot more opportunity to scale through things like membership communities or mastermind groups.
If you're enjoying this episode of Leveraging Thought Leadership, please make sure to subscribe. If you'd like to help spread the word about our podcast, please leave us a review and share it with your friends. We're available on Apple Podcast and on all major listening apps, as well as at thoughtleadershipleverage.com/podcasts.
So you're obviously savvy about your market and how it works. And I love the segmented model approach where in essence, the same model that they might pay you whatever, a lot of money per hour, they can get a derivative version of that at a lower rate, not high touch as consuming your time, but you knew right away what the impact on the ROI was of an intervention with you. And I think that a lot of people, quite frankly, don't. So if you know that whatever the average therapy session is $200, and if I can get someone 5, that's $50,000 a year. So then it's really a matter of when you present your value prop. Okay, so you're going to spend 5, 10, 20, whatever much with me, but here's what I'm looking at on the other side. I think a lot of people fail to do that, and it actually makes your job harder when you can't take a client by the hand or a prospect by the hand and say, let me walk you through this and do the math, because this might seem like a lot, but ultimately, would you pay a dime for a dollar is what I'm asking you to do.
Yeah, I mean, even on our application to work with me or someone from my team, we ask them, well, how much are you making net per month? How much do you want to make net per month a year from now? Like, have them tell you this information. And so if I can take you from 10K a month to 50K a month, like, how much time would you want to put into that? Do you want that to be more done for you? Do you want my team to implement that? Do you want to be the person that hustles? Like, how do you want that to look? I mean, the client has a vision often for what they want from whether it's consulting or a mastermind group or membership community. I would say that the average person, if you're doing kind of one-on-one consulting or group consulting or growing in some way, ask 5 to 10 questions for every one answer that you're giving. And just say, I want to clarify what you actually need here. And that client's going to tell you as much, or you're going to see the blind spots where they say, I have no idea what my clients are worth. I have no idea what ROI is. I mean, then it's like, maybe you don't want to work with those people. Yeah. Because
that's where I was going to go next in terms of, I think when we're all starting out in whatever we're doing, we're so eager that someone said yes to us, that we're like, yes, 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 yes. And then you get your teeth kicked in a couple of times and you're like, actually, it's not always about selling. It's about finding a match, because if you choose to be my client, or, you choose me to be my client, did I just buy a headache 60 or 90 months down the road? Right. And so I was going to ask you, what are the things that you're looking for when you're talking to someone and go, ooh, red flag, that's a problem, or wow, I'm really excited to help that person?
Well, I mean, I think so. Even just that, do they understand ROI in regards to what they're investing? I remember I had a podcast sponsor who was paying $1,000 an episode or so. So that's a lot of money when I'm doing 3 episodes a week. But they routinely didn't have a unique URL. They routinely did not have any sort of promo code. And every year they would have a new marketing director would come in and make the case to them as to why they should keep paying me. It's like, well, you aren't doing basic tracking on your sponsorship. Like, that's not my job. And it was such a headache. I ended up switching to their competitor, who was more than happy to pay for years, more than that amount. And so I think whether it's a podcast sponsor or a consulting client or kind of whatever the mix is for the individual listener, to first and foremost, look at how you pair up. So for example, I mean, I wrote a book about how, we should take Fridays off, about the 4-day work week. So if I have someone that wants to text me all weekend long about their business, that's not my client. Like, I love that. If they're like, I need to have 24/7 access to you. I have 2 awesome daughters that I want to raise and have fun with and go paddleboarding with. I don't want to be stuck to my phone because I'm like your consultant on call. So I'm going to look for a culture fit. I'm going to look at, what's their why. If they're like, I just want to have this big yacht and I'm just a superficial person. Well, I would consider myself a pretty deep person. Nothing against people that own big yachts. That's awesome. Yeah. But I also want there to be some substance there about what their impact on the world is. And then I started to look at some of the numbers.
Yeah. What about track records? I always look, and sometimes it goes both ways. Like, what's the disclaimer on most securities is, past success performance is no indication of future success. I disagree with that. I think if someone has been accomplished in another domain, in another field, they've got the grit, they put in the hard work, that's usually helpful, although not always. There's a reason somebody's 60 and never made any money, right?
Yeah, I've seen it go both ways. Sometimes new people have so much grit and hustle that they just like want to succeed and they'll just go after it. And I've seen people that have been successful that instead of doing consulting at every corner, they're kind of questioning me as a consultant. But then I've also seen people that are doing a great job and they just want to enhance those systems and they recognize their own blind spots. So I actually haven't seen that one side or the other ends up being easier to work with or get better outcomes.
Yeah. So I like that indicator that you have. Like, it's clear that part of your brand is you're putting your priorities out there, your family, your children, these other things. Mm-hmm. So texting you at 9:00 at night, one would think, now listen, there are plenty of people that's how they operate. They're 24/7. Nice. Great. That's a match for you. I'm not the guy that's going to, like, I'm out to dinner with my family. It's 9:00 on a Tuesday. And then, some clients create fire drills, or what is, urgent to them actually could have waited till 9:30 the next morning.
Right.
And no one would have died, quite frankly. So, yeah. Cool. So tell me briefly as we start to wrap up, what is the new book, Thursday is the New Friday, obviously sort of a 4-day work week play. What is it that you hope people take away from it? If we were to hang up and talk again in 6 months and I said to you, hey, Joe, I got 100 people on the line here that have read the book. What are you hoping they tell you about it?
I mean, I would say number one, the 7-day week, it was made up by the Babylonians thousands of years ago. And, less than 100 years ago in 1926, Henry Ford made up the 40-hour work week. So first and foremost, we made this up. We can change it. And so this thing that feels so secure, the 5-day week. I mean, let's be honest. Fridays are half-worked days. Friday's been having an affair with the weekend for so long. And let's just call it what it is. Like Friday is when we have birthday parties and stuff. Like, let's just move that over to the weekend. So I would say first, we made up all of the time. We can change this for what we want. Secondly, I would say the big concept in the book is that typically we run full tilt for 5 days and then we barely recover on the weekend. We might have Friday night, Saturday, and by Sunday morning, we're already thinking about Monday and we're dreading that Monday morning. If we flip it and we start to look at slowing down and optimizing our brains is the thing that helps us kill it at work, even if we still do a 5-day week. If we look at our weekends differently and say, how do I best optimize my brain through some very clear boundaries in the evenings through the week or on the weekend, we will do better work during the week. And then the third thing I would really say is that when we give ourselves less time to work on things, the top tier things move up. Parkinson's law, the work expands to the time given. And so we should be shortening the amount we work so that we drop the ball with the very unimportant things.
So, I mean, ultimately, the gist is 20% of your week is probably not optimized, and that's being conservative. So let's just be honest and cut it out. And I think, the old joke is always, your most productive day at work is the day before vacation, right? When you're cleaning up your emails, making sure the to-dos, or you got to give somebody else a list or whatever. So the constraint that you have is self-imposed, like the 8-hour day, the 5-day work week. Somebody made these things up, and I like the idea of. And I think actually post-COVID, we're moving into this world of, as an employer, am I paying you for 40 hours or am I paying you for an output that looks more like this? Make our clients happy, serve this, do that. And should I really care about the input side? I think that's an interesting question to ask.
Yeah. I mean, even if we just think about the industrialist model, it was great at the time. People were working 10 to 14-hour days, 6 days a week or 7.
Well, literally getting paid by the widget. I mean, you're measuring how many strokes you did on the loom.
Yeah, it was totally needed at the time as a step in the evolution of business. But do we still think people are parts of a machine? Do we still think that people have no higher purpose than just being a cog in the wheel? I would hope not. I would hope we've outgrown the industrialist in a number of ways. And so I would actually argue that COVID was kind of that final nail in the coffin for the industrialist era. And we're right now in the messy middle where we are moving towards exactly what you're talking about, that we're looking at what are the outcomes we want here? How do we live a life that we enjoy what we're doing while also doing work that really matters to us in the world? And when we do that, we're going to make more money. We're going to help more people and we're going to live a life that we actually enjoy.
Well, that's the key piece. Well, this has been phenomenal, Joe. I appreciate your time. Best of luck with the book. And thank you for sharing your story with us today. Thanks, Joe.
Oh, Peter, this has been awesome. Thanks so much.
To learn more about Thought Leadership Leverage, please visit our website at thoughtleadershipleverage.com. To reach me directly, feel free to email me at peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And please subscribe to Leveraging Thought Leadership on iTunes or your favorite podcast app to get your weekly episode automatically.